with liberty and justice for all.
May we have a roll call, please?
Johnson.
Present.
Kelly.
Here.
Mikulski.
Here.
Polika.
Here.
Leaks May.
Here. And approval of the agenda.
If I can find my tab with the agenda. Hang tight. I would like to pull the approval to accept the corporate donations to support the flock safety program from the consent agenda and move it to the.
I'll support that.
Mikulski.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Polika.
No.
Leaks May.
No. That does make it go. We do. The motion does pass, and we are going to put consent agenda item 7C. Okay. 7C will become 8B on the regular agenda for discussion. Now our next item, number 4 on the agenda, is the presentation of Main Street America accreditation for downtown Ferndale. Who's presenting that? Oh, Annika.
Good evening. On behalf of the Downtown Development Authority in Ferndale, I'd like to introduce Annika Norris, who is a Ferndale resident and also our liaison with Main Street, Oakland County.
Hi, thank you. Tonight, I am here as the liaison for Main Street, Oakland County, and Main Street America to certify that the Ferndale DDA Main Street program has been recognized as a 2024 accredited program for meeting the standards of performance last year. We always look back on last year. Just a couple things real quick. There are 862 accredited Main Street programs across the country. 12 of those programs are here in Oakland County. And this achievement is one of the highest achievements you can get in the Main Street program. It's the top level of recognition. What it is, it's elite designation signifying a strong commitment to preservation-based economic development and community downtown management. All of the programs that have achieved this status, they're always looking for meaningful ways to create impact in their downtowns, looking at sustainability, managing economic development, quality of life, and organizational improvements to the downtowns. And we love to present this achievement at council because without council, they can't do what they do, right? Without having the DDA for funds and working together with all of the city staff, all of the departments. The DDA has such a great relationship with the DPW, with the police, and everyone. It's just, I think it's important that everyone sees the recognition of all the hard work that they do on behalf of the city of Ferndale and on behalf of the council for people. So I just brought some the investment and economic impact for Main Street Oakland County program from 2001 to this last year, 2023, that we can leave behind. It's quite an amazing feat. Out of the 28 communities that we have in the Main Street program, these numbers only represent the 12 select level communities because one of their requirements to get the accreditation is stats and keeping up with the number of jobs in the downtown, new jobs, jobs lost, new investment, all those types of things. We're now creating a program for all 28 of our communities to start putting those stats in because this number is quite off when it doesn't represent all of the communities. But I'll leave these for the community. And I don't know if we have anyone else here, but I was wondering if you guys would be willing for me to get a picture with with Jenny and you all.
Of course.
Pictures on days where I can. Okay.
We have come to the part of the agenda where we have call to audience. As you line up at the podium to speak, we ask that you speak for 3 minutes, state your name and address, and you can speak on anything on and off the agenda.
Kathleen Latash, 715 West Breckenridge, in Ferndale. Good evening, and thank you all for the opportunity to speak tonight. It's good to see all of you. I'm here tonight representing the Ferndale Inclusion Network and to share a message of concern regarding the item that was the consent agenda, item 7C. That, if approved, would allow the Ferndale Police Department to have local businesses pay to support the automatic license plate reading technology known as FLOC, a pilot program approved last year. So there's a couple of concerns that we wanted to share with you tonight. One, as you know, this was a pilot project originally approved in March of 2023, and it was temporarily approved at that time for 16 cameras. After the first 60 days, according to the action, the police department was supposed to provide a report about which of the 16 cameras were most effective, and half of them were supposed to be removed. That was supposed to happen within 2 months after the 60 days, and there was supposed to be a report released about, which cameras, what was working, what wasn't. We have not seen a report that was supposed to be issued after those 60 days. It's uncertain whether or not those cameras actually got taken down after the 60 days, after that 2-month period. The new request tonight indicates in the contract that the trial period just ended, making it sound like the 16 cameras have been in use the whole time, for 16 months instead of just 2. And there's still unclear about where the cameras are. We don't have a map. Last time we checked, half of the cameras were pointed at the Detroit border, which raises some systemic racism concerns. Secondly, the system was supposed to be paid for by drug forfeiture money, but now we're asking businesses to pay for it. And especially the police department asking businesses to pay for that, it raises some ethics concerns. Further, there is not any indication that the initial action would cost more money, so we're concerned about the fact that it's costing more. That this could actually expand the project. So it's still in a pilot phase, and yet we're now being asked to expand it, or you are being asked to expand it. And any expansion should take place after the initial pilot phase has been evaluated. So that's the second concern. The third is that there's been not enough transparency on the data, and I would say very little transparency. Where the cameras are located, if they're working effectively, who's being investigated, what about the error rates that we know the system has? It's looked, honestly, from the public, more like a marketing and promotions campaign with only success stories being reported. It hasn't been a balanced report on the data transparency. And I will tell you that I personally know of more than one instance when someone was pulled over by police, Ferndale police, due to an error in the FLOC system. That's just me, an average citizen. And when you get pulled over by the police, for anything, it can be a scary prospect. But being pulled over when your car is on a hot list, well, that's worse because you're already a suspect, and things can get hard and hot and high risk really fast. In fact, some citizens have experienced harm from this around the country. There are several cities around the country right now that are being sued for using this technology by citizens that have been harmed by it because of the errors. So essentially, we think that Ferndale really needs to thoughtfully and responsibly look at this technology. Is now a time for expansion when the pilot hasn't even been completed? We don't think so. It's now being, the item is coming up for discussion later today, and we think that these points need to be raised and discussed. It's not something that needs to move forward through quickly. It really needs to be thoughtfully deliberated. So we would request that that take place, and that's it. Thank you for listening.
Hi, good evening. Stephen Kuzmanovich, 2037 Livernois, Ferndale, Michigan, 48220. Make it official. 25-year resident. I just wanted to take a moment of my time to express my sincere thanks to Council Member Mikulski and Roger Caruso, the DDA director, for helping me fix my problem I've had with a hoarder neighbor that's been going on since 2020. Problem solved as far as I can see now. I'm going to monitor the situation, and thank you so much. Second item, the flock cameras. I'm on board 200%, okay? It's catching bad people doing bad things. They're not photographing people, they're photographing license plates, and they're taking hits off stolen cars, in cars involved in felonies, murders, car theft, you name it. So 200% in favor of that. Keep it up. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Prasad Venugopal, live at 1425 West Troy Street. Good to see all of you. I'm also a member of the Ferndale Inclusion Network Planning Committee, but Kat's already spoken on behalf of Finn, so I will make my comments my own. I'll just correct something the previous gentleman said. According to Flock's own documents, they actually take images, photographic images of the entire car, and have used it in previous times. I think there's a problem with this agenda item that was 7C and is now 8B. There are issues of transparency, integrity, and accountability. Before this proposal was passed in March of 2023 at a public forum, Finn members asked that the ACLU be invited in to have a conversation to strengthen the proposed action and the contract. That was not done. Our specific request was ignored, and no reason was given for why our request was ignored. And let me be clear. Looking in the ACLU report and having a flock safety rep talk about an ACLU report and saying they address their recommendations is not the same as having a conversation with the ACLU. Now we see that this time there was an attempt to put it on the consent agenda and have it passed without any discussion at all. Further, not only subverting transparency, but also, I believe, showing a lack of integrity, given that council was split on a 3-2 vote on a very controversial issue. It should not have been put on the consent agenda as if there was no issue at all about getting corporate donations to fund and increase the number of cameras. Let's talk about integrity. The original proposal called for a 2-year period with 16 cameras reduced down to 8. Paid for by public monies, even though the ethical nature of those drug forfeiture funds is something that needs to be discussed. I think to change it without having a discussion about where the funds are going to come from and not maintaining the idea that the action should be funded to a further, if we wanted to put more cameras, it should be funded according to the original proposal, or a new proposal should be put in place asking for a different source of funding. But that is not done. I think that's a lack of integrity. Third, in terms of accountability, are we really going to step into this dangerous territory of asking private corporations and businesses to fund public monies? Public expenditures reflect the common good and reflect our values. Even if I disagree with how it is being spent, the ideal case is that that's what it represents. To use private monies is to represent private interests. And to remove the accountability, where are these cameras going to be placed? Why are private conversations in back rooms taking place before they're placed on for council action? Are we back to the age where, based on the names that were listed in the proposal, white men are sitting in back rooms making deals that are going to influence the direction of government and the security and civil liberties of citizens? I think it's remarkable that that was what was attempted here. I ask that this motion, that the agenda item 8B itself be tabled, and we have public forums to have a discussion about the increase in these cameras and the nature of this technology before we proceed. That's my recommendation as a citizen.
Good evening. Sherry Wells, 315 West Troy. For background, I've been married with a 3-month-old when we two were on welfare for almost a year while I finished my degree. My caseworker said I could be a caseworker, so I was. We treated our clients as any public servant should treat anyone. As it is said there, but for the grace of God, go any of us. Fast forward to Ferndale. I was running for city council when a woman told me her good news. She was getting a place in public housing. Soon after, she told me that when she was given the key, she was told, "You live in a unit, you are not part of the community." I tried to attend all city boards and commissions meetings. At the Housing Commissions, Director Wilson demanded to know, "Why are you here?" Residents of Autumn House organized to meet me at the library. In ones and twos, they took different paths to get there, so it didn't look like a group. My notes was a long list of complaints. I saw little of it, if anything, fixed by the Housing Commission. I represented a tenant at a hearing. Another resident complained about her grandchildren, but did not appear. 9 others did to testify that the complaint was all untrue. Wilson still held against the resident. But 3 strikes and you're out of public housing forever, and there's really enough low-income housing in this country. Through this, I met Jennifer Bailey. We've now been friends for 9 years. She learned in her handbook, its rules violated what we believe to be right and just in this country. I learned it to Crystal Proxmire, Oakland 115 News, and she blew. She covered the story starting then and through to the arrest and conviction of the director for stealing drugs from the residents' units to support her drug habit. The assistant to the director expected to get promoted. The new board was concerned that she might be too ingrained with the prior regime approach, and she was. At another hearing, her attitude was cocky, as if she expected to be supported by the new director, and though her evidence was inadequate, regrettably, she was. Residents are still afraid to stand up and to speak up, except Ms. Bailey. The board hires but questions nothing. The current director hired all new staff, but they're even more rude than the prior ones. Reasonable requests are not being handled. And Ms. Jennifer has more of an update, mine was my background. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jennifer Bailey, and I'm going to piggyback off of Ms. Sherry. As she said, we met like a long time ago, but I think that the staff that we have now is getting worse, and nobody is looking into it. You know, the reason I'm in this position, I was a nurse, but I had to quit my job because, well, I didn't quit, but because of my disease. And I live in Autumn House since 2009. I've been treated with discrimination. I have not been treated with discrimination until that time, not in Ferndale or Ferndale before then. The problem exists before Ms. Sherry, before I met her, and after I met her, you know, the maintenance, health, and safety, such as Deborah Wilson, we know what Deborah Wilson was. You know, very disrespectful, rude, and ignore our tenants. Her replacement was a little bit better, but, you know, we still have outstanding issues that need to be dealt with. The current director hired all new staff, but she and they are even less respectful than the tenant. I mean, they are even less respectful of the tenants. You know, you have a director, assistant director person, or somebody else, you know, it's ridiculous. You call, you cannot get through. I had to fill a form where they say that I have to have accommodation. And this is 3 months now, 4 months, I'm still waiting for my rent receipt. I haven't even received accommodation, and I have not even received my rent receipts. I keep calling, I wrote them, and one director told me that she is not a bank keeper. You know, they is so rude of people that you guys, well, not you guys, but are put in position, and this is the way our tenants have been treated. And they're so ashamed, and they're so afraid of what will be done to them, but I'm not afraid. I'm here to speak on the behalf of myself and the tenants. The buildings are extremely bad in condition due to the long-standing neglect and weather damages. The last couple of years, rain came through the roof the other day and it destroyed the roof. Up to now, this is like, what, 4 months? And the apartments have not been fixed. And all we're getting is excuses, 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 and we're living in a poor condition. I think that somebody on this panel right here, you know, should help us in some way. If not, we're going to protest in front of this building. Jennifer Bailey, thank you.
Hello, my name is Paul Colon. I'm representing my uncle Anthony Colon. He lives at 157 West Camborne. Tony is unable to attend because of physical limitations. Tony's lived at 157 for over 35 years. He also owns 165 West Camborne, which he's owned for just as long. He pays over $10,000 a year in property taxes, and he has lived in Ferndale, Oak Park, his entire life. He was a first graduate from Ferndale High School in 1964, the new building. The concerns we have are relating to the strip mall across the street, which houses Jimmy John's, Chipotle, Pizza Hut, and the UPS store. The parking across the street, no, first off, the deliveries. The deliveries come in the middle of the night, early morning, and every time they deliver, they create a disturbance. The trucks idle, creating diesel rattle and spewing fumes that fill his house with fumes when the windows are open, and even sometimes when they're not. They bang their cargo as they roll up and down the ramp with their pallet jacks and they also let off their air brakes. Tony has contacted the police and members of the city council over the years to no avail. We thought maybe a face-to-face would be a little bit better, so that's why I'm here. It's been relayed to us that there is no ordinance for overnight deliveries. And my answer to that is, why not create one? I bet if a city council member lived where my uncle did, there'd be an ordinance drafted for no overnight deliveries, because he is getting woken up at least once or twice a week in the middle of the night. The next is the traffic situation for the restaurant patrons. Chipotle customers park up and down the street. They block 157's driveway, 165 where my daughter lives, and 175. We call the police. Sometimes they show up, and other times they just miss them. You know, we appreciate the police. We realize they have a lot of things to do. More importantly, appreciate all the work they do for the city. We'd like to maybe see some no parking signs, more no parking signs with listing of the fines. Maybe paint the curb yellow. And see what we can do to stop that and the unloading of the UPS trucks during the day and clogging the street. The other thing is with the elimination of the right-hand turn lane for making a right off of Camborne on the Woodward for the sparsely used bike path, traffic now backs down the street, and you can't even get out sometimes. It's difficult at certain times. And that is a fire route that is getting by parking and this right turn thing. Lastly, Tony's complained numerous times about the dumpster across the street and the rat problem. It could be eliminated by more pickups. We see them the rats running across the street in the early morning and in the evening time. Gentleman was up here, he got help with a hoarder. We're asking for some help. Okay, this is a quality of life issue. My uncle's lived there a long time, back when it was Jim Ashmore Truck and Trailer, okay? Looking for some help, we'll listen, we'll try and do anything we can. If you'd like to contact my uncle, I will definitely arrange it. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? All right, then I close public comment at 7:29. And we are now moving on to a public hearing, consideration of a conditional rezoning agreement for 918 St. Louis. Item 6A.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Christine Ross, and I'm one of the planners here. So I'm just going to briefly introduce this item, and then I will pass it off to Cody Noel, one of the members of the applicant developer team. So this item is requesting to conditionally rezone 918 St. Louis from R1 single-family residential to MXD1 mixed use. The applicants are seeking conditional rezoning approval in order to construct a 2-story, 8-unit multifamily apartment building. Currently, the site exists as a long vacant single-family house with a detached garage. The parcel is currently zoned R1, and the applicants are requesting to rezone it to MXD1. So conditional rezonings occur when an applicant seeks to rezone it with limitations. In this case, I've already mentioned the limitations before, but essentially no other construction could be built here except for a 2-story, 8-unit apartment building. And if this particular design building with that unit count and that story limit, if that building does not get constructed within 2 years, the zoning district reverts back to R1. The applicant is requesting MXD1 due to proximity to other mixed-use parcels. If you look at the image on the right here, all the purple is the mixed-use district. You can see that on both sides of West Marshall. That is that street just north of those purple parcels. And then St. Louis is zoned R1. So it abuts the MXD1 zoning district, and it is directly adjacent to that. So there are 2 approval processes for this project. The first is a site plan review, and that is considered by the Planning Commission. And then the second is this conditional rezoning approval, and that is considered by the Planning Commission, and they can make a recommendation for approval or denial, but they don't have the final authority. City Council does. So at the June 5th Planning Commission meeting, the intention of the development was to build a 3-story, 12-unit apartment building. So they were seeking site plan approval, a waiver of 4 off-street parking spaces, and a recommendation of approval. The parking waiver and the site plan motions were tabled, and the motion to recommend approval failed to pass. But it can still go forward. And this item also came to the February 21st Planning Commission meeting as a discussion item. They're just seeking feedback before they formally submitted. After hearing some concerns with parking and massing, following the June 5th meeting, the applicants voluntarily decided to scale back the size of the building from 3 stories down to 2 stories and from 12 units down to 8 units. A parking waiver is not needed anymore. The applicants are able to meet all of the parking space requirements without a problem. The ordinance requires 11 parking spaces, and they are proposing to build 11 parking spaces. Let's see. Conditional rezonings are subject to public hearing requirements, as stated in the Michigan Planning Enabling Act. So the act requires municipalities to mail a notice to every property owner and occupant within a 300-foot radius. I included a screenshot of that radius, just so everyone can see. So this red circle is the 300-foot radius, and then every highlighted teal property was a property that received a notice in the mail. We also published it in the newspaper, and we posted it outside 15 days ahead of time. Staff supports this conditional rezoning request due to its alignment with the 2022 master land use plan known as Plan Ferndale. The future land use map does designate this parcel as residential, but its intent statement does call for strong neighborhoods, increasing density, friendly front porches, which this development is proposing porches and balconies with individual entrances, very street-friendly, as you can see here. So let's see. This conditional rezoning also adheres to all of the requirements in our zoning ordinance, in our Article 2414. We're also working on a new zoning ordinance that this project would be expected to comply with as well. So that is about all I have, and I will pass it over to Cody now.
All right, thank you very much, Christine. Thank you all for coming out here this evening. I appreciate it. My name's Cody Noel. Grew up in the area, about 30 minutes north. Went to school here. My partner, I went to Michigan State. My partner on this potential building here went to U of M, played hockey, so got our fan bases hopefully covered there. So I owned a house in Berkeley a couple years back and had friends in Royal Oak and kind of started to get familiar with this area. So great area. That's where the previous project I started working on was the Marshall Street project. But a couple years ago, I really started getting interested in what I call like missing middle. Well, I don't just call it myself, but you can Google it, missing middle homes, missing middle housing. Essentially something like anywhere from 4 to 12 to 15 units on a single or double lot. So you're increasing the density a little bit, but still kind of fitting in with the fabric of the neighborhood. And I was running some numbers, and if literally just 1% of single-family homes in the Metro Detroit area were to convert a single-family home to a missing middle, we could deliver like 100,000 units or more. As you all know, we are in a housing shortage. Prices are high. I mean, we're in a housing shortage nationally for 10 years, probably upwards of 12 years at this point. I say the majority of the nation because there are pockets in the South, pockets in Texas. Take Austin, for example, experienced a ton of development in the last few years, delivered a ton of housing units, and rents are coming down across the board. Home values are falling because there's more supply, right? There's more competition. So if we can do that, if we can help increase the supply, we would love to do so. Now, we did, like I said, we did just finish a 4-unit project on Marshall Street. Construction was last June to this June. There's obviously some pre-development before that, but we put our units on the market in late April for rent, and we were leased up in like 2 weeks, maybe 3, I'm not sure, and that was before construction was even done. So there is demand for this type of building. One of our tenants actually came from St. Louis Street. She was paying like $1,300, maybe $1,400 a month in rent for a 1-bedroom place. It was dated. She didn't have laundry, so she'd have to go to laundromat, and obviously that costs money. So she was able to move. Her part of the rent is like 35% less, 30 to 40% less, depending on, I don't know if it was exactly $1,300 or $1,400. And everything's brand new. It's not dated. Brand new appliances, washer, dryer, in unit. So she's very happy with that. So I spent a ton of time working down at the project, and that's where I, over the last 2 years at least, saw the home at 918 St. Louis. Beautiful almost double lot, and just, it's been vacant for years. Reached out to past agents that listed it, found out, that MacPella owns it. So, we had those conversations with them, and we originally, as Christine said, we did a discussion item to kind of get feedback from the Planning Commission, and then we went to the Planning Commission, worked obviously very closely with the Planning Department, and thought we kind of developed to the city's liking, a kind of slightly modern but fits in with the neighborhood building. It was a 12-unit, 3-story, as she mentioned. So in June at Planning Commission, it was a split vote. It kind of got a little wonky where they wanted to table the site plan and just vote on the conditional rezoning, which then kind of created the problem, well, if we do recommend approval and rezone this, they could just come back and build an even taller building because now it's by right, which is not like that's not what we're trying to do. We're not like trying to pull a fast one or build a McDonald's or office space or something like that. So, so it is a conditional rezoning. We did reduce, like she said, like Christine said, we did reduce from 12 down to 8, so a 33% reduction in housing units, took off the whole 3rd floor. So now we meet the parking requirements. We did that, based on the feedback that we kind of heard from the public. Parking was an issue and possibly spilling out into the street with 12 units, and then I know the Planning Commission was kind of concerned about the height of the building. So I feel that we took that into consideration. Obviously, this is just a conditional rezoning approval that we're asking for. We're still open to feedback on the color. I mean, if black is, that's very modern, right? White and black. If that's off-putting, we still have to go back through Planning Commission and get approval there. So open to some design aspects there. So yes, we are asking for conditional rezoning to MXD1. I'm pretty familiar with the area. There's a nice block of MXD1 running there through Marshall. We are the first property outside of MXD1. The property to the west is zoned R1, but it's like a full-on apartment complex. I mean, it's 3 stories. There's one building on Marshall, and there's one building on St. Louis. I'm sure, obviously, it was probably like grandfathered in. It's been there for a long time. So I believe that our 918 creates a nice block of MXD one, and then the house to the south, house to the south, that's also MacPella, and I mean, it could be argued that that's almost commercial because that's kind of where all the maintenance comes in and services the cemetery. So, I mean, I don't know. We feel like, we're trying to take an unproductive property, essentially, that's been vacant I've been down there for at least 2 years. From the agent, I think it's been vacant for like 4 or 5. I'm not 100% certain. But it's been, vacant for a long time, and we're trying to turn that into a productive, beautiful place for people to live. We estimate it'll probably deliver anywhere from, $30,000 to $35,000 a year in taxes once it's built. I really enjoyed building the building on Marshall. It took a lot of time and effort. I feel like, pretty well with the planning department and the building department. So I would love to continue doing that with you guys. So. Any other questions? We have ample bike parking. As Christine touched, we have 11 parking spaces. We do have to have an empty spot for handicap accessible. Otherwise, we would have like 12 spots. We need all we've got, 20-foot driveway all the way through, 24 feet between parking spots for two-way traffic in the back of the lot. Underground retention system. Yeah.
All right. Well, this is a public hearing, so this is an opportunity. I'd like to prepare opportunity for anyone who'd like to speak on that. Please come to the podium. To the podium.
Do you want to say what time you're opening?
Opening at 7:42. Public comment for the public hearing, yes.
Yeah. All right. My name is Jenna Parks. Hello. I live at 811 St. Louis Street, and I oppose the proposal before you tonight. I believe that rezoning, especially jumping straight to mixed use from any residential option, would be a profound detriment to the quality of life of our quiet street. Sorry, my heart's going. I've brought with me today a petition that I've been circulating, and this petition has the signature of 43 St. Louis residents who also oppose this rezoning. I'd like to note that every person I spoke to, really everybody who opened the door to me, signed it. I did not have a single person decline. Approval of this would indicate a negative turning point for our quiet residential street and seriously caused me to consider moving out of Ferndale. We're afraid of rezoning creep. We are not Marshall. Marshall is mixed use. St. Louis is R1. The developer's property on Marshall has already been brought up as evidence in favor of 918's rezoning, and it's easy to see this becoming a trend and sneaking further down the street. 345 Marshall is a poorly constructed eyesore, and a similar property on St. Louis would stick out like a sore thumb. St. Louis is a low-key side street. We do not have heavy vehicle traffic. We have an abundance of pedestrians. People are walking their dog, young children are biking and visiting the park. I believe a structure greater than a duplex would disrupt this peaceful environment and fundamentally change the quality of our neighborhood for the worse. I ask you to please reconsider, or please consider voting against this proposal and reconsider incorporating mixed-use properties on our primarily residential streets. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emily Barr. I also reside at 811 St. Louis Street. I want to echo what my partner just said about zoning creep. I'm going to also make a couple of other points about how this council should heed what happened at the Planning Commission, should question whether this actually aligns with the city's stated goals and upcoming proposal increasing dedicated funding to recreation, and direct the council to consider whether the references to the other property on Marshall and the mixed-use district on Marshall are really as accurate as the developer claims. So first, again, I'm concerned about the creep of mixed-use zoning down St. Louis. It is a really quiet place. It has a nice park that a lot of families with children frequent. There's a lot of people walking through, and to disrupt that with additional traffic and the possibility of more people parking on the street could present serious problems. I want to encourage the council to think about what happened at the Planning Commission meeting. It was a split vote, but that also indicates that this wouldn't be like a super well-received development if it wasn't an enthusiastic yes from the people on the Planning Commission who've had a chance to really dive deep into this. Shouldn't that be an indication that maybe it's not going to be the best idea to move forward? Also, as I noted, there is a quiet park on this street that a lot of families frequent. I know the city has announced that it is putting forward the proposal to dedicate a millage to parks and recreation operations. I know that's focused right now on different parks, but this park also counts. We don't want to increase the population density in our area and the traffic in our area in a way that would drive people away from utilizing the city's already provided green space. And finally, I think that the references to Marshall's mixed-use nature are a little misleading here. Marshall is one of the only mixed-use districts that is neighbored by R1 in the entire city. There's a small portion, at least on the zoning map available currently, there's a small portion of Vester that is similarly zoned mixed use, but nowhere else in the city does that exist alongside R1. This would be, it would start changing the nature of this neighborhood. So I also encourage you to vote against this. Thank you.
Hi. There are many reasons to vote no. I'm Rachel Engel, and I live on 430 St. Louis Street. And thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to bring us closer as a street. Like, this really has, we tightened up. We're represented today, 43 signatures, and we've been talking about it and thinking about it because we love St. Louis Street. It is special. There are many reasons to vote no to rezoning St. Louis Street. The plan presented by the developer was originally grotesquely inappropriate as a 3-story building and remains grotesquely inappropriate as a 2-story building. All of the problems originally presented by the residents of St. Louis remain. To guide us in our decision-making, we have Plan Ferndale 2022. Thank you for doing that. A resident-driven master plan required by the state of Michigan. Vote no to rezoning St. Louis Street for all the reasons rezoning failed to pass in the Planning Commission and by being guided by the Master Plan 2022 of Ferndale. Here's how rezoning our residential street for this non-resident developer is irresponsibly contradictory with the Master Plan of Ferndale. 1, the Master Plan of Ferndale 2022 acknowledges a 25% increase in annual rainfall caused by an increase in demand and drainage, reducing the capacity of the pipes and accelerating the deterioration of the stormwater. On page 2 of the executive summary for climate change vulnerability, the plan calls for action to increase green space, and further states that establishing green space becomes more challenging in climate extremes. When asked who would be responsible for the cost of maintaining and fixing a strained infrastructure from this project, the Planning Commissioner stated taxes. That is not okay. Not the developer profiting from straining the infrastructure. The bill will be passed to residents. Who will be responsible for flooding and increased deterioration of the sewage system caused by the mixed zoning? The greatest vulnerability in increased rainfall due to climate crisis is the capacity of the pipes. That capacity is set. It is not set for mixed use. Vote no on rezoning to mixed use to preserve green space and protect the deterioration of the sewage system. St. Louis Street is in a section of Ferndale identified in the executive summary for climate change vulnerability as having the highest percentage of residents under 5 years old. We have an obligation to slow and reduce traffic and to reduce pollution in this section. This proposed mixed-use zoning places an unreasonable increase in traffic on a street where there's a children's park and an abundance of children. Where the proposed mixed-use zoning again fails is in making the assumption that St. Louis is the same as Marshall Street. It is not. St. Louis Street is a quiet residential street where kids ride bikes. The street is narrow and originally designed in the early 1900s for Model T cars and oxen carts. The traffic on the street cannot be slowed because St. Louis is an alternative route for emergency vehicles. Speed bumps are not allowed. So vote no to rezoning for mixed use as an obligation to protect the high percentage of children on St. Louis. 3, the Master Plan of Ferndale 2022 acknowledges the residents of Ferndale are the center point of this city. That's a direct quote. The residents have spoken in regard to rezoning a quiet residential street to mixed use. The residents that live in St. Louis spoke out resoundingly no at the Planning Commission meeting. Some employees and commissioners ignored the residents and seem to be representing the developer, disregarding the effect this project will take on the people that live on St. Louis. Some listened to the people and voted no. The proposed rezoning failed to pass in the Planning Commission. Vote no to rezoning because the people who live on St. Louis are asking to be heard and valued. The petition of 43 people, it speaks for itself. No means no. It meant no at the Planning Commission meeting, and it still means no. The Master Plan of Ferndale 2022 lists major corridors appropriate for mixed use. It's clear. They're 9 Mile, Hilton, Livernois, and Marshall. You know what's not on there? St. Louis Street, because it's a quiet residential street of historic houses built in the 20s. It's inappropriate to convert St. Louis into a mixed-use corridor. Vote no because St. Louis is an inappropriate place for mixed use.
Thank you, Rachel.
Hi, I'm Brian Engel. I also live at 430 St. Louis. I'm just going to continue reading. So another major goal stated at the Master Plan of Ferndale 22 on page 18, strengthen neighborhoods by encouraging rehabilitation of existing housing stock. Mixed-use rezoning weakens St. Louis as a functioning neighborhood by destroying our little historic houses and replacing it with McMansions, high-cost rental complex. Instead of destroying a home that belongs on the street, rehabilitate it. Maintain St. Louis's vibe. No rezoning is needed. Vote no to destroying homes and the character of St. Louis. There were 2 words that kept coming up in the Master Plan of Ferndale 2022 in regards to housing needs for Ferndale. One of them, accessibility. The proposed mixed-use zoning accomplishes neither of these goals. All right, I'll skip that one. We'll go on to 7 here. Affordability. The working and middle-class individuals that built Ferndale and continue to make the city thrive are less and less able to call Ferndale home. The same developer has a new apartment complex in Marshall with units costing over $2,000 a month. When the developer was asked the rezoning would result in more affordable housing, at the Planning Commission meeting where the Planning Commission meeting where the project failed to pass, the non-resident developer stated it is not affordable housing, it's attainable. What is attainable? Attainable is a cringe for greedy gentrification. The home that would be destroyed in this rezoning is actually affordable and is being purchased for less than $110,000. It is currently being withheld from the market, and there are buyers who want this home as an actual affordable home. The Master Plan of Ferndale 2022 defines affordable housing as between $500 and $1,250 a month. The rezoning to mixed use for this project is not only in contradiction to the actual housing needs of Ferndale, but it is destroying an affordable house and replacing it with a high-cost rental. Page 28 of the Master Plan of Ferndale 2022, it states, one of the greatest challenges towards the goal of adding units while retaining affordable housing options will be to protect the existing, naturally occurring affordable housing stock. Vote no to the rezoning mixed use, as this project does not accomplish any of these housing needs stated in the master plan and reduces the amount of existing affordable housing. In summary, vote no to rezoning the affordable home that sits between 2 residential homes on a quiet residential street. May the developer and those in power listen to the people who live here and recognize the need to blend in with the architecture of the street, rehabilitate an already existing affordable home, value with ample green space, and zoning within the perimeters of existing residential zoning. And, a quad or a duplex is also acceptable too, but no rezoning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments regarding the rezoning?
Hi, it's me again, Stephen Kuzmanovich, 2037 Livernois. Well, I don't live in their corner. All the previous speakers stole my thunder. This rezoning thing is getting out of hand, okay? And I'm not in favor of any of it, and people seem to want to fix what's not broken, and I'm getting a little tired of it. That's it. Thank you.
All right, closing public comment at 7:56, and I'm opening it up to council discussion.
Well,
I would like to hear from Councilmember Pollica because he's the council liaison to the planning.
So I am the liaison to the Planning Commission. I sit on the Planning Commission. And the developer did bring this project to the Planning Commission several months ago with an idea, presented it, and the commission at the time wasn't really bothered by the project. When he formally brought it to the Planning Commission last month, there were a number of people from the community from St. Louis Street that came, and a number of emails, letters that were sent to us in opposition of the project. Their concerns were that it was too large. Their concerns was that it was not fitting in with the community because of the size. There was traffic concerns. And so when it was presented to the Planning Commission, half of the members, including myself, voted against the rezoning. I can't speak for the other members, but for myself, I felt that it was out of place. It was too big for the neighborhood. It does sit right on the edge of the mixed use, on the northern edge. It would just continue the mixed use zone slightly, but I did feel that it was overpowering to be driving. If you were to drive north, all of a sudden you just come onto this big 3-story structure. Right across the street is a 2.5-story structure. There's actually 3 floors but the first floor is buried into the ground, so it's only half a floor. Yeah, so when the developer now presented this adjusted plan going from 12 units to 8 units and only going 2 stories, I have given it more consideration, but I do want to know more from staff, and I have some other questions of the developer, but I will let the rest of council proceed.
So do we have staff come back to the, like, how do we, sorry.
Do you have questions for staff?
Do they come back to the podium first?
Yeah. Yeah, they really shouldn't be that far away from it.
Christine?
Hi.
I will start with one of my first questions, and this may be for you, it may be for the developer, I'm not sure. One of the residents, sorry, if you see me typing up here, residents, it's because I'm literally try to write down everything everybody says at the podium, and I try to do the best I can. One of the residents, Mr. Engel, said that he was informed that the development will not be affordable, but will be attainable. I know this is, only 8 units, so that's not normally a size that would militate in favor of like some big giant carve-out for affordable housing, but what does that mean? What is the nature of all these units?
Sure, so I can just speak to some semantics differences between attainable and affordable. Affordable is oftentimes used it almost feels like a sort of legal term. You have 80% AMI, and then, anything under that is considered affordable, especially here in Oakland County. We are the wealthiest county in the state of Michigan. So, whereas attainable is perhaps not 120% AMI, it's somewhere between that 80 to 100.
So this project would not include any, this is not including any credits of it, no LIHTC credits, they're not involved in any of the state funding that would utilize to create affordable housing?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Very important to know. I will have more questions, but I want to rotate.
I have one question. Would this have normally went back to the Planning Commission?
Yeah, so the site plan does have to go back to Planning Commission because they have the final approval authority, but the conditional rezoning would not go back to Planning Commission because they already gave their recommendation, so it would just stay here at City Council.
So it couldn't go back there because they voted it down, so it has to come here?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, through the chair. Actually, it would have come to us anyways. Had the Planning Commission approve it, their approval is their, they don't have final approval, council does. So they would have approved to send it to council. But the developer actually has the right to actually bypass the Planning Commission and come directly to council, if they so wish.
But they didn't do that?
Well, they kind of are, because now they've changed the project from going from a 12-unit to an 8-unit. And so this is supporting a conditional rezoning, which means that even though the request is to change it to mixed use, if approved tonight, all they could build would be a 8-unit apartment building. They couldn't next week decide, you know what, we're going to add 4 more floors, or 12 more units, or turn it into a mom and pop grocery store. The conditional approval is strictly for a 8-unit apartment building, and they can't vary from that. That's, the conditional rezoning that's the condition.
Through the chair, if I could, just add to that, but there has been a change from the standpoint of the proposed design that was considered by the Planning Commission, and that is being presented to you this evening. And so one option could be, if you wanted further input from the Planning Commission with respect to the modified plan, council could decide that it's not prepared at this point in time to proceed and could refer it back. It doesn't have to. It could proceed forward this evening, or it could say the Planning Commission didn't weigh in on the 8-unit development proposal, restricted, that is part of the conditional rezoning agreement, that it would not be larger than the 8-unit, but but you don't have a recommendation from the Planning Commission specific to that request that's before you this evening.
Through the chair, I have questions. I'm hoping I don't lose my thought because you touched on something.
Sorry.
I want to weigh in on, but I'll try to hold that thought somewhere in the back of my head.
Write it down.
Right? So questions. I have questions about the going from R1 to mixed use. And Christine, I may also call Roger up because he did help me understand some of this, but I feel like I need a little bit of a refresher, especially for the public. So going from R1 to mixed use, where's the cutoff between R1 and R2, which we understand to be a single family and duplexes? And why did we jump to mixed use?
Yes, so we have 4 different residential zoning districts. We have R1 all the way up to R4, and then we have 2 different mixed-use districts. Something that we have to be careful about with planning and, you know, doing zoning maps is to not do spot zoning. So I actually was anticipating this question, so I had this pulled up. So if you look down here, so this is the corner that we are talking about. So R1 is white and mixed use is purple, and then this light yellow is R2, this dark yellow is R3. So down in this corner, there are no other R2 or R3 or R4 parcels. There's just R1. So if we were to, because R3 and R4 would actually allow this type of zoning, or this high of a unit count, there would be some different design aspects and, you know, stuff like that, but that would create spot zoning to have an R3 or an R4 parcel right next to, you know, R1 to the south and mixed use to the north.
And through the chair, what's the issue with spot zoning?
There's some legal concerns. I'm not sure if it's in the Michigan Planning Enabling Act or Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, but it's bad practice to take a parcel that is in an established zoning district and change it. It wouldn't fit in with the character of any sort of neighborhood. There's that classic, you know, planning example of you wouldn't want an industrial factory in your backyard, stuff like that. It's just to kind of protect the nature of the zoning designation. Every single zoning designation has intent statements that need to be followed, and so spot zoning would erode that integrity.
Okay. And so this mixed-use property, is it contiguous with the current mixed use?
Yes, yep. So the parcel we are looking at is this right here, this box right here. So yes, it would directly abut mixed use.
Okay, so the house that's on the other side of it is currently mixed use as well?
Correct, yep. There are, I believe, 2 houses right here. Those are both mixed use. And yeah, it would be.
So.
Can I say something real quick?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this was, I was also originally interested in this and kind of how to lay out the property, because I originally had kind of sketched a property running distance-wise off of St. Louis, so like from St. Louis to the cemetery, going back, which would be allowable under like R3 per se, and which is also 35 units per acre, so we would be able to build like 9.5 units or something, 9.45 units. So we were, you know, encouraged through the, it was in February, I believe, through the a discussion item with the Planning Commission, we were encouraged to not spot zone and to stay MXD. But even though it's quote-unquote mixed use, I mean, it's residential. So regardless of the label, it's just, we're residential zoned, so. And you know, that's, the width of the building is, you know, conforms to mixed use, but. Yeah.
So it is residential. I would agree with you, even though the zoning that you're requesting is mixed use, due to the condition of making sure that we are only allowing residential in there. So if if it wasn't mixed use, it would essentially be R3 or R4. Which one of those would it be?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, either one, I believe, yeah.
So then it really comes down to the difference between R3, R4, so keeping within traditional residential, which would agree with our master land use plan, versus the mixed use, really comes down to what, like parking and massing? Is that right?
So the parking count would remain the same no matter what zoning district it was, because that goes off of unit count. And then there are different height limits for different zoning districts as well. I don't remember the height limit for R3 or R4 off the top of my head, but I do know for mixed use it's 45 feet, and the developer is proposing way less than that. I think, what, 20?
With the 12 unit, we were at, I want to say it was like 34 feet. So removing the third floor, I think we're 24 to 25. It's essentially 10-foot floor plates with a low-pitched roof. So it's probably, I mean, Tom and I could pull out a calculator and figure out based on the pitch of the roof, but it's probably 5 foot tall, so to the peak. So 25 feet. I mean, I don't see it being even close to as tall as the apartment across the street.
One last question. How do we handle sewer and sewer capacity and water capacity in that area when we are adding in additional units?
Yeah, that is a really good question. So we do send all of our site plan applications to our city engineers who are contracted through Giffords-Webster. So I'm not quite sure exactly how all of that works, but I can definitely reach out to our engineers and try to get some more information on how their sewer systems all work, because it's a little bit out of my wheelhouse.
Okay. And I'm going to go back on my word. One last question to follow up on that. Did we send the site plan to Giffords and Webster when it was 12 units that were being proposed?
Yep, yeah, they recommended approval as noted, as presented.
Based on the capacity of the infrastructure to handle it?
Correct, yes. Yeah, the 3-story, 12-unit apartment complex idea was sent to Giffords. They approved it. And we have not sent the 8-unit to them yet.
Okay.
And also, I'd like to ask for a point of clarity, for public clarity. The R1, if you can just kind of go down, the R1 is single residential use. R2 is?
Single-family and duplexes.
R3?
I believe it's single-family and multiple family.
Plex.
Yeah, up to a 4-plex. Okay.
R3.
R3 is 35 units per acre.
I'm sorry, say that again?
R3 is 35 units per acre.
Okay.
And I believe max building height is 35 feet.
And then R4 you said was?
Also more of a multifamily orient. I don't think you could I don't know if you can even do single family in R4. There's only 2 R4 parcels. Maybe there's 4, but it's the Housing Commission. So this orange is R4, and then this orange over here is R4.
So I guess my question is, why do we have to change the zoning at all for this development?
Correct, yeah. So R1 would not permit any sort of multi-family. It would not permit anything more than a single family. So in order to have a unit count of 8 units, or originally proposed 12 units, you would have to rezone it.
So it couldn't qualify for any of the other, our classification zonings?
It could qualify for R3 or R4, but that would be considered a spot zoning.
And just to give a little context, Madam Mayor, so in the R3 zone district, the maximum building height currently is 45 feet. The lot coverage is 70%. The front setback is maximum of 10, so they want you close to the road. The side setback is 5 feet. the rear is 20 feet, so the R3 is more of a walkable, urban-type residential. And then one other reason why we wouldn't do R3 or R4 is our new zoning code is likely taking out those, leaving us with just R1 and R2. So if we did zone it in a short while, we're not going to probably have that zoning district.
And just for the mixed use, that typically is a certain, a height, specific height, and is that also the number of units?
So MXD1, the minimum height, I believe, is 25 feet, and the maximum height is 45 feet. I would have to double check the exact height on that. And then there is not the MXD1 district doesn't have that maximum unit per acre requirement like the residential districts do. But it does have more design elements, so our mixed-use zoning districts are form-based, so it focuses more on how the building looks and feels on a pedestrian scale than, concrete, rigid, setback standards. So for instance, the primary frontage requirement is that 80% of that building has to be within 0 to 10 feet of the property line, and you can't have parking in front of the building. In our R3 or R4 district, some of those design elements are different. So you would get a more architecturally pleasing development and more of a pedestrian-friendly development with the mixed-use district as well.
So, through the chair, so Christine and Roger, what happens if we don't approve this tonight?
What does that mean?
Means what I asked.
Well, you can refer it back to the Planning Commission if you want to hear what their thoughts are. You could table it. If you're looking for additional information, we can provide. You can approve it or deny it.
And if we deny it outright, what happens?
Per the code, there's a period by which they can't submit something that's very similar unless there's a material change in facts or something that would necessitate that. So if you deny it, then they would drop out of contract. It would sit there for a while. Somebody might propose something at some time. It might be a couple years. I don't, who knows at that point.
One second. And if we send it back to the Planning Commission, what happens then? Like, what's the process? If we refer it back, do they do a further deliberation and attempt to make another recommendation back to this body?
Yeah, we would notice it as a public hearing. It would go back to Planning Commission with the change from 12 units in a 3-story to 8 and a 2-story. I don't want to assume what they do, but it was pretty close on the last one. Then they would give a recommendation of approval, and then it would come back to you. That might give you more comfort. Denial, which is just a recommendation, then it would come to you for final decision. Or they could tie again with no decision, and it would come to you for consideration.
Mr. Cody, I'm sorry, I forgot your, remind me of your surname.
Oh, Noel, Cody Noel.
Noel, got it. Sorry, my apologies, Mr.
No, it's okay.
You were wanting to say something.
Yeah, you were kind of saying, he mentioned too, like, they might fall out of contract or whatever, so, yeah, we had a due diligence period with MacPella. I also just wanted to kind of, I guess, rebut or mention, I don't know where the 110,000 came from, but that's totally not what we're paying. It's like 60% more than that. So MacPella had a pretty firm number at like around 200, so we're basically close to that. I did also want to mention that, yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful, wide lot that I really feel like this missing middle housing fits in. I mean, I don't know where else you're going to get a lot of infill-type development to increase housing supply, but I don't think really anyone would buy that for that price, because if it's just single-family home, I mean, to demo it or to, gut remodel it, I mean, that's very costly at that price point. I mean, the only way you can kind of put something there is based on unit economics, and, makes up for itself over 20, 30 years, so.
Through the chair. So I just want to go through a couple of things. First of all, I really appreciate so many people reaching out to us via email and letting us know about their concerns, whether they supported it, because we did get some letters of support, as well as opposing the project. I want to make a couple things clear that kind of stood out to me in some of those communications. First, the park cannot be sold. So I know that there's a concern with creep, and that all of a sudden, you know, all this development is going to come through, you know, and wipe out Oppenheim Park. That can't happen. By law, the voters would have to vote in order to sell parkland. So there's no way that that park, unless the voters want to sell it, there's no way that council could do anything with that park. So the park is safe. The other issue that I know a lot of people have concern about is the stormwater. And this might apply to you, Mr. Noel. So on your Marshall project, you have a retention pond.
Correct, yeah.
You're not putting a retention pond on this project. How are?
No, that was per the city that we had to have that retention pond. Well, it's under, yeah, sorry.
Okay, yeah, it's not a surface retention
He
pond. I'm
means
sorry.
a visible, yeah.
Yeah, my question is, how are you going to handle stormwater that's on this project?
It's an underground retention system. Tom can speak to it if he'd like, but essentially, you know,
it's a big...
Yeah, a basin with, you know, piping underground, and storm grates that, you know, set at a certain grade that once you've, you know, put your, you know, whatever, 3/4 wash limestone or gravel and asphalt down, you know, your grade pitches and
slowly
meets.
feeds into the...
Correct, it slowly fills up.
If you have a large storm, the water's going to collect in this basin and then slowly be released into the storm.
And I don't know all the engineering on it yet. We haven't got that far, because that would be more like, you know, prints and plans. But there's probably, you know, probably two to three basins. Yeah.
I'm Tom Paluche. I work with them. I'm a builder. I've been doing this for a while. So retention, underground retention is designed, and I'm sure Giffords and Webster looked at the sizing and the mechanics of it and how it works. So it's gathered in pipes under the parking lot, and it's reduced slowly to the existing road drain system. So it doesn't overburden it, so it, you know, doesn't all rush in, so it creates a capacity to hold it in the pipes, and it slowly releases it. It's being used in a lot of municipalities for small lots that don't have the capacity to storm, you know, just a retention outside.
Yeah, we
very
actually
common.
require it for these type of projects.
Yes.
The city does. So there's no project that's built like this in the city that
Well,
doesn't.
anywhere in downtown, everything is underground.
Yep. So this goes back to you, Mr. Knoll. You are proposing these be apartments. Are you opposed to condos where people actually have an investment in the property?
No, I would love that. Honestly, I don't mean any offense to this, but the commission meeting I mentioned it a little bit, but it got a little wonky with some of the communication about the rezoning and tabling the site plan and just focusing on the, you know, conditional zoning and then not wanting to recommend approval because we could come back by right and make it taller and add more units and yada, yada. So we really wanted it to just be as simple as possible. We're 100% open to being able to condoize these. It would actually be better having that approval as part of it earlier rather than coming back down the road. But yeah, a path to owning a home I 100% support that, yeah.
And then one other issue, or one other thought that I had, not issue, but in your renderings, you show that the driveway is on the north side of the project. Would you consider moving it to the south side so it feels like this project is a little bit more north?
I'm okay with
kind of a buffer.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean, I don't know if the neighborhood's okay with that. I mean, it's the vehicle's then traveling another 80 feet down the road.
True,
I mean,
yeah,
realistically, the
that.
vehicles only come down about 50 feet. to get to the place. So there's not a ton of, I mean, we love, yeah, and also the creep too. I mean, we love the park. It's like, I mean, who doesn't want to live near a park and whatever, kids or go swing or whatever. So there's no creep there. But yeah, I think cars would, it depends. I'm 100% open to it.
I hadn't even thought about the cars coming down, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. That's all I have.
I apologize, I do have another question, Madam Mayor. And I'm not sure who this question goes to. It might be Roger and Christine, it might be Joe, I'm not sure. You know, we've had a really interesting and robust conversation, but going back to my notes from public comment and also all of the emails that we got, and, you know, we can make a lot of interesting suggestions and changes, but what it doesn't address is what seems to be one of the core concerns of residents, which is massing, so parking on the street, and increased traffic. So what are our options to alleviate that? Is there a way to continue to enforce street parking, you know, to restrict it, to make it even more restricted in that area? Like, how can we, I'm in an awkward place. I literally campaigned for this seat because I want more housing for Ferndale. That's literally my whole jam. It's my whole thing. And I'm in a weird position where I want to bring more housing to Ferndale, but I've got a lot of opposition to doing that in this case. And I want to see if I can thread a needle. And maybe I can't. I don't know. So I'm asking these questions to find out what are our options to alleviate concerns about street parking in these things. Is there an enforcement mechanism to ensure that this doesn't happen? I mean, I'm asking.
Yeah, I do know that Park Ferndale has specific residential zones for parking. I'm not sure if that portion of St. Louis is under that. Yeah, it's tricky, you know. You need more housing, but you need a place to store the cars, and in a tight, older, you know, built-out city, it's a very difficult thing, and, you know, we encounter it in a lot of our other projects as well. There is ample bike parking on this property as well. It's in a very, very walkable, very bikeable area. You know, there's always a possibility that maybe one of the tenants would not even own a car, they'd just be on their bike or walking. So, you know, there's always options like that.
Through the chair, I can speak. There's also is a residential parking zone ordinance. Park Ferndale does right now enforce, I believe, 4 districts. The ordinance requires a majority petition. It sounds like the residents are well organized, so they got a head start on that. But there's a petition process. Once that petition process is successful, then my office gives a recommendation to council, and council considers whether that's included into a new street.
Yeah, but through the chair, if this project were approved, that becomes part of the residency, and so they would fall under, I mean, you're not reducing their vehicles on the street, because now they're part of the street. So these 8 units are going to have vehicles that are going to be allowed to be parked on the street because they live on the street.
If I can just say too, I mean, we have 11 spots for 8 units. So it might be anecdotal, but we have 6 spots for our 4 unit on Marshall, and we only have 5 vehicles, so we have an open spot. Anecdotal, but I feel that we have enough parking, so I don't know.
I think one thing to note for this project is when it was originally 3 stories and 12 units, they were asking for a parking reduction. So we do have a code in place for a reason, and it does have the required number of parking spaces. I'm sure we can work with the applicant that they can communicate to the residents not to park on the street, but as general taxpayers, I don't know how they would not allow them to, but communication could go a little ways.
All right, so I too, like Councilmember Johnson, I advocate for housing in this community. But I'm struggling because I know the street that you're speaking of. I had to think about it, but I know this street, and I'm just thinking about the narrowness I'm thinking of the narrowness, the parks across the street, primarily, is that correct? I'm going to my historian here, Councilman Pollica. But it's a pretty quiet street, housing, residential housing, a lot of residential housing on that street. The park, and it's pretty quiet. I'm just trying to figure out the impact that this type of building would have on that street, even in terms of the construction throughout. I think it would be, it would infringe on residents' peace of mind there. But not saying that I don't want to see this project happen. Don't make that conclusion. I just think that this is something that, one, our Planning Commission did vote deadlock. They didn't have a chance to speak about the new proposals. And short of just voting no, which I don't want to do, I think it's something that they should look into, and that we should get some insight from them. That's just my take. I don't want you to waste your time. I don't want to shoot it down. And I just think there just needs to be more discussion about it before we make a decision. So that's where I am. I don't know where council is, but that's where I am right now.
Through the chair, Madam Mayor, I'm in the same place. I'm not in a place where I want to vote it down, but I want to continue the conversation. And one thing I want to continue the conversation with is the community, is the residents on the street. And I want to have the conversation and reply to each one of your emails. And for those of you I don't have an email from, I will find out how to get in touch with you. It might be by Facebook message. I apologize if that's the case. But, I want to hear from you, because I want to hear, is there a way forward? Like, if you had to propose, like, what is your alternate proposal? Maybe it's just, I want to leave it as one single-family home. Then I want to hear that. But, like, I want to engage in a little bit more community dialogue before we do this, and I would like the Planning Commission to have time to look at this proposal, because I was surprised coming into this to find that, well, their recommendation was actually related to the 12-unit proposal, not the 8-unit, and for me personally, the Planning Commission is my body of experts. They're the ones who know this stuff way better than I do, and they're here to advise, and in this case, I'm not being advised on the specific plan in front of me, and so I'm with the mayor on this. I think that the solution is, I don't want to shoot this down, but I want to continue the conversation a little bit longer.
Through the chair, I would just piggyback on that and echo those same sentiments. I understand that this mixed use is not, it's really residential and denser residential, but without our experts really looking at this and weighing in on it, given that the split, from my understanding, was about massing and parking, we don't have any input on that, and it feels preemptive for us to make a determination on zoning.
Comments? We'll make a motion.
I move that, oh boy, okay, let me think of the form of the motion.
What does it look like now? Because this is,
What's the form of the, just,
To table this matter until further consideration by the Planning Commission with respect to the revised plan.
then I move we table this item, the consideration of a conditional rezoning agreement for 918 St. Louis, until such time as we have received input from the Planning Commission on this matter.
Support.
Johnson?
Yes.
Mikulski?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Polika?
Yes.
Speaks May.
yes.
Staying. It's coming to me anyways.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for all the work that's been put into this. We are now moving to the consent agenda. Let me make sure I've got the second. second. Spot. 1 second, I lost my spot. Okay, all right. Okay. Consent agenda. Item 7A, approval of the June 2024 meeting minutes. 7B, approval of the water infiltration investigation and testing at the DOT by Fishbeck for $9,600. 7C, approval to purchase 2 traffic data collectors to help monitor vehicle traffic levels on Woodward Avenue. 7D, approval to pre-authorize election worker payroll for the August 2024 primary election in an amount to not exceed $25,000. What number am I on? I'm getting my letter, I'm getting confused because.
7E.
Okay. 7E, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, so now 7E, approval to submit payment to Premier Polysteel in the amount of $9,692.60 for picnic tables at Martin Road and Wilson Parks. 7F, approval of Wilson Park Improvement Project Change Order Number 2 at a cost not to exceed $18,000. 7, oh my goodness, 1 second.
The one that's always above.
I know, but, okay. Heaven's sakes. All right, 7G. Approval of the First Amendment to the revised interlocal agreement for inspection and review services between the City of Ferndale and the City of Pleasant Ridge. H, approval of the resolution honoring the services of Oakland County Sheriff Department Sheriff Deputy Reckling, encouraging community reflection. I, approval of network upgrades to Fire Station 1, the Police Department, and City Hall in the amount of $25,337. J, approval of the proclamation to recognize July 2024 as Disability Pride Month and recognizing the 34th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. K, approval of bills and payrolls as submitted by the Finance Director and subject to review by the City Council Finance Committee. Who will receive the consent agenda?
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Holika.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Mikulski.
Yes, with comment.
Speaks May.
Yes. Would you like to make your comment now before we go to regular?
Yes, very briefly. 2 items on here. I did send questions to city staff today concerning. One was the approval of water infiltration investigation and testing at the DOT by Fishback for $9,600. And the second was the approval to submit payment to Premier Polysteel in the amount of $9,692 for picnic tables at Martin Road and Wilson Park. So my comments are, with the picnic tables, we did receive 3 bids, and I thought that was important to point out. That was not within the packet, and we did receive 3 bids. The best bid is the one that was being recommended. 2, the water infiltration investigation. Joe has provided some context into why we are paying for that. I would ask that we have a slightly longer write-up about why we're paying for that, just to give a little bit more context into it so that we're not giving people the impression that we are on the hook for every single thing associated with the structure. That's it.
We're moving on to the regular agenda. Item 8A, approval of the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund Agreement Amendment to extend the deadline to implement planned improvements at Martin Road Park and authorization for the Parks and Recreation Director to sign the agreement. Thank you, Emmanuel.
Good evening, good evening. My name is Emmanuel. I'm the Recreation Manager with the City of Ferndale. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the project agreement that we have on the table tonight. Tonight's motion is to extend the deadline to implement changes or implement these upgrades at Martin Road Park as per the agreement with MDNR. MDNR is one of our larger grant contributors for multiple different park projects. So it's important that we have a good working relationship with them. Where'd the keyboard just go? Oh. So this project includes a variety of different scope items. The highlights of this project include a full court basketball court, which will be high school sized, 4 pickleball courts, a walking path connection to the parking lot, some parking lot improvements that will include ADA spots, and a new park pavilion that will be replacing the current basketball court that is located just southeast of the splash pad. There are also some additional amenity improvements, including drinking fountains, benches, tables, and trash and recycling bins. So this project needed to be delayed for a few different reasons. One of them, we wanted to start this project in spring of 2024. We were initially delayed by MDNR, which takes time to review the various different proposals that they received from different agencies all across the state. So in the midst of that process of getting the approval done, we needed to push that timeline back. We also found, once we finally put the RFP out for the project, that we were at that time competing with several different school improvement projects that were going to be taking place this summer. Anybody that attends Ferndale elementary schools knows that both elementary schools are under construction, as are many of the elementary schools around the area. So that drove prices up, as developers had already had prior projects that they were going to be working on for the summer, and they tacked on a little bit more than we were anticipating when they initially gave us their first round of bids. When we rebid the process recently, we made some modifications. We modified the timeline, obviously, because we needed to accommodate for the delays that we had experienced early on in the process. We also removed some of the non-essential work items, which include some surface coating and some metal edging. Just to give you an example, in one of the early bids, in order to reseed the grass after the project was going to be done, would have cost $100,000, whereas normally that would be somewhere in the range of like $5,000 to $8,000. So yeah, it was a big nut. It was a big screw there. So the bids that we got back initially, they ranged from $854,000 to $1.4 million, which is way above our estimated budget of $542,000. When we reduced those scope items and modified the timeline, we got 3 bidders back, and the bids ranged from $579,000, which was a lot more reasonable, to $1 million. So the difference in the low bids from spring to our most recent bid was a difference of about $270,000 due to those various factors that we talked about earlier. And this is a quick overview of the funding sources that we have. We have a lot of money from various different sources. Some of the biggest ones are Oakland County, MDNR, and the enhancement grant. We also have some ARPA funds and some dedicated general funds money that should be used to match the stuff that we got from MDNR. And so the next steps after we hopefully approve of the extension tonight, July 22, pending MDNR approval, we are anticipating putting out the funding recommendation to award the contract. And we hope to start the project on September 3rd and close the project out well before December 31st. December 31st was chosen as the deadline for the extension because it is a standard practice to extend it for 6 months per MDNR regulations. And that is it.
All right, I'll open it up to council for any discussion regarding this extension.
I have 2 points I'd like to make through the chair. One is I want to give my kudos to the recreation staff and to the city manager's office for working very hard on rescoping and figuring out how to bring these costs down, but still deliver a really good result for the residents and the people who enjoy the park. I know from experience, it's very hard to do, to find that balance, and you guys managed it, and I want to thank you for that. And for the residents, I really want to point out, when we looked at the slide with the funding breakdown, Emmanuel, if you don't mind going back to it.
Sure.
I just want to point out that, we're going to be able to do these improvements with other people's money. I mean, we have to put in some of our own money, because of course, you've always got to have a little skin in the game for some of your grants. But our general fund is only having to put up $68,000 as a match of an entire $761,000 project. And I think that's really commendable. And I think that's something I really want to make sure that residents understand and internalize is, we're able to do something really great, and we were able to do it with grants. And that's the dream. That's the ideal, is to minimize the amount of your general fund and maximize the amount of other people's money, so that our taxpayers don't have to do it all. So
That's much appreciated. There's a lot of work that goes into securing those grants, so it is very appreciated.
yes, thank you.
Any other comments?
I move we approve the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund Agreement Amendment to extend the deadline to implement the planned improvements at Martin Road Park and authorize the Parks and Recreation Director to sign the agreement.
Support. Johnson?
Yes.
Polika?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Mikulski?
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes. Thank you. All right, we are moving to item number 7B, to discuss the approval to accept the corporate donations to support the flock safety program. Thank you, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you're aware, back in March of 2023, the last council approved a pilot program. I don't want to bore you with a history lesson, but it's been a long journey to implement the 16 cameras that were intended to be a trial. The last camera went in May. I know that's over a year to implement. We were dealt with a few obstacles, supply chain issues, materials, permitting through MDOT. These were all obstacles that we worked with the vendor and MDOT to finally get the last camera installed in May. So we also negotiated with the vendor when that 60-day trial would start, because we didn't feel it was fair. If we were supposed to analyze the 16 cameras, how can we start analyzing them on day one when 60 days we didn't even have 8 cameras in, let alone the 16 that we were supposed to collect information on. So we are able to negotiate that 60-day period starting in May. So we are about at that point now, which led us to the next issue. We had always intended on maximizing the strategic placement of this technology as, in a methodical way, the main entry routes to our city, regardless of where they are, north, south, east, west. Traffic comes into the city, the flock cameras are oriented into the city to catch the rear of the vehicle as it enters the city. That's the best application of the technology was 16 cameras. In a perfect world, if funding was available, that's what I would ask for out of the gate. But we were limited in our resources, and we opted for the funding for 8 cameras out of drug forfeiture to save the general fund the burden. Well, since they've been implemented, the detectives have had several fantastic results, including armed robbery, home invasion, carjacking, stolen cars. We've had terrific success, and it has worked as we anticipated. So I'm happy to tell you a progress report right now that it is working as we anticipated. I will still be submitting a 60-day report depending where the funding ends and starts on this. If it stops at 8, we'll explain why we're keeping the 8 we got. If we're able to fund 16, the reason we have the 16 is because strategically and tactically, those are the cameras that make sense. But if we have to scale it, if we do have to scale it back, we're prepared to share our reasoning for why we're keeping exactly the cameras we're keeping. In most cases, it has to do with volume, but in some of it is entry or best results, but typically volume, it will be the indicator. So as we approach this 60-day window, the detectives approached the administration through the captain, the deputy chief, and myself, and they really did want more of the cameras. They like the results. They are seeing the efficiency improve. They are seeing solvability improve. So we've been down a detective with our staffing issues, and we had to reassign one of our detectives back to patrol. So we are down a detective, and my job as chief is, you're charged me with solving crime, protecting, keeping our community safe, and part of that is giving our officers all the tools they need to do their jobs effectively and support them. I felt like when they came to me, Chief, we really want this technology. We like what we have implemented. Is there any way we can fund it? And I am quite aware of a city's financial situation, and I told them that there's absolutely no way to fund additional cameras through forfeiture or general fund at this time. At that time, we were we were regularly approached by business owners, specifically the same supporters. I mean, people like the owner of Detroit Axle or Ferndale Collision, or in this case, Suburban Ford, who they've offered assistance. And they ask, how can I help the city? In some cases, I've pointed them to Parks and Rec. They may be looking for program funding. I've pointed them in Suburban Ford supported Pride. Like, these are civic-minded individuals who are just looking to give back. There is not a quid pro quo. That is not the situation. City governments, police departments, we all know schools, public institutions, it is quite common to accept corporate donations, especially to fund programming that may not be a high priority, like Flock. It's a priority to me, but we know in the big scheme of things that if we have to cut, programs like this with a low PBBI score or program-based budgeting score is probably going to get axed. So I had to try to get creative, innovative, and try to meet that funding gap by reaching out to some of our partners who have been there for us in the past. Mr. Zoma has always been very generous, and this was a program that I felt it was my responsibility to see if I could find the funding. And they were more than happy when I explained to them what the technology is, how it is used, and how it's used to solve crimes. They were very ready to support it and wanted to actually rally more assistance from their colleagues in the community. And at that time, I told them to wait. I consulted with the city manager, and for the sake of transparency, we came to this body for approval. But that's how we got here. I believe in the technology. We are being transparent in its use. We are regulating who has access to it. We have denied federal agencies access to it because they simply do not do the same mission in a lot of ways. So we denied the FBI, Homeland Security, DEA. we denied them access. There's local law enforcement departments who refused to sign our MOU, and we refused them access. We were given strict guidelines with the access and use of this technology. And we need to be trusted, and we need to prove that we can be trusted. So we put together a robust policy, and we are following it. So that is the long story short on how we got here. I'm sure there may be some questions, maybe along the lines of Flock and how it's being used, or why the implementation time took so long, but if you have any questions, I'm open to them at this time.
I would like to start if I could.
Sure.
I wanted to, could you please share, Chief, I know that when you and I spoke, businesses have donated to police and fire and for other initiatives before. Can you share with us, just if you can remember, what sort of donations have gone towards the purchase of police and fire equipment in the past?
Yeah, I would feel like it'd be out of line to speak to fire, but certainly with the police department, I know that Detroit Axle in the past has funded our Honor Guard unit. They have funded equipment. We purchased FLIR infrared detectors for car-mounted infrared units to find people in the dark, and those are car-mounted, and they're pricey, and they were probably for 3 units, it was about a $12,000 donation. In the past, Mr. Mike from Detroit Axle donated, I think, approximately $10,000 to the Honor Guard unit. In the past, Dennis Zoma's supported our charities. He's supported our unions. I know recently I met with the new general manager at Suburban Ford, and that was him reaching out to me, and he wanted to help. And I told him I don't have anything at this time, and that was months ago. But I said, well, you know what, maybe, Ferndale, Parks and Rec, or, that may be an option. And then when this opportunity came about, of course, he was the first person I called because he was interested. So that's where we go. I know in the past, some donations going back, 25 years, whether it's weight room equipment, I know in other departments, like Berkeley, they paid for their canine unit through it, or Honor Guard units, or in case of the Detroit Police Department, their entire mounted unit is funded through private donations. This is very common practice, actually.
Through the chair. Adding to that, I recall several years ago, for a couple of years, vests, bulletproof vests were being donated to the police department. And I believe auxiliary police equipment has been donated, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not uncommon for, funds or equipment to be donated to the police department. We are a nonprofit. Did the city spend more money for the additional cameras after the original 60 days expired? Like through this whole period, it's been a bit over a year. Have we paid more for what we originally requested? Originally it was 16 for 60 days, and then we were going to go down to 8. So we've had these 16 well, we haven't really had 16 cameras for the whole time, but have we paid any more money during this period of time?
We haven't paid a dime yet because they haven't met their obligation until May. And then when they finally met their obligation, we had our 60-day window. We renegotiated to say this is what we really agreed to. In intent was 16 cameras for 60 days was the intent. And they backed it. They did backtrack. They apologized for not meeting our, our expectations with implementation and installation. So they backed it up and allowed us to observe a full complement of cameras for the 60-day period. So that's effectively where we're at now. So that's what really brought us to this point.
Okay, so we haven't even spent a dime. We haven't written a check to anybody yet.
No.
Okay. Are we asking for more, for funds for more than 8 cameras, or we're still in the agreement that we're just going to be utilizing 8 cameras?
The 8 cameras funded by the Drug Forfeiture Fund, that's already been funded. We were seeking donations to fund the second 8 cameras to the 16 that's in the contract.
Okay. And my last question is, have we experienced any false positive results with the cameras that we have, either by our department or information we captured that was shared with another department?
I am not aware of an incident. If there is, I would like to know about it because I'm concerned. I would like to know the circumstances behind that. The hot lists simply report what is on the lean computer and the NCIC computer. And if that information is wrong, that has nothing to do with Flock. That's with those crime computers. If the officers happen to run the plate and stop them, it would be effectively the same thing. Flock just acts as that intermediary or that third party that alerts us. I would like to know because context is everything. And a lot of people may have anecdotal, some stories, but we really do need to know about it so we can really see what, if it is happening, because we don't have any information regarding false positives or negatives that could be attributed to Flock itself rather than lean or NCIC.
Thank you.
Through the chair. I think you just hit to the heart of the matter. Two things. The item that you just mentioned, that we don't have data associated with false positives, but we have individuals that are saying that they've had false positives. I need transparency on that. I need some sort of due diligence that allows those anecdotal pieces of information to come to the police department and be assessed and be part of that report that we will be getting. And the second point that I have, and the reason that I wanted to pull this, is because when we approved this in 2023, the write-up that we had said that the first 60 days of the contract includes 16 camera locations at entry points to the city with high traffic volume. After the 60-day trial period expires, the 8 most efficient camera locations based on the data collected will remain in place. And a report will be presented to council after the 60-day period. That's what I agreed to. That's what I want. And it's that simple. I just need to see something to help me understand what the cameras are doing. I would love to see that go through the Citizen Advisory Commission so that they can help assess that data and understand it and disseminate it for council, because that is well beyond my wheelhouse. But that's why I pulled it. That's all.
Understood.
For the context.
We have asked the CPARB, and, we have an open invitation to come into our detective bureau and have our detectives show them how they're using it. We've had it several times. They haven't taken me up on that offer, but there's an open invitation to, please contact me, and we can sit you down with the detective and take you through the how it's used, where the rubber meets the road in reality, and this is how it works. They just haven't taken us up on it.
Is the CPARB, do they have access, or is it encouraged for them to view the dashboard at all?
Yes, we've discussed all the dashboards at length, and, they've been very observant. They are spot on, and they understand our policies, and they question things, and they ask for answers, and actually our relationship has been fantastic.
And one more thing. I just want you to know that when I looked at this on the consent agenda, this is why I called you with some questions, because I needed some clarity. So I just want to publicly say that I do not believe that it was some back alley agreements. I do not believe that there was any ill intent, and I don't believe integrity should be questioned. I think this was a donation. You've had donations before. It looks like it's common for donations for police equipment and for other things. What I would recommend is that when we do have donations in the future, perhaps we just, we know about those, they be either line items in the budget, something that we know of so that we don't find out about it this way, or that I don't think we should have any problem. I don't think if it doesn't have to be, then if it's a matter of donations from anything, it doesn't have to be on the consent agenda item. We can put it on the regular agenda so that individuals can see and comment on it. So I just want you to know, I don't think that there was any questioning about it, and I'm sorry that you had to hear those comments.
Understood. Thank you.
Through the chair, given the comment on the consent agenda placement, I will take accountability for that. That was my judgment. I viewed the donations because they are past practice, and we have a past practice of accepting donations for multiple agencies on the consent agenda. I was consistent with that. So I hear the scrutiny, but I will take accountability. That was not the chief ME's decision.
So my issue with this is interesting because I know people aren't going to like this, but I generally don't oppose this sort of technology as a general baseline rule. Usually this technology is just a tool accessing the same databases that police officers use from their cars. And maybe I'm a cop in my mentality. My father's a retired highway patrolman. My brother is an active highway patrolman. My uncle is a retired cop. All the men in my family are cops. I went to law school. You can blame me for that. But so I generally don't have an issue with this kind of technology, especially if we have good policies in place and we have a citizens police advisory board, we have use policies. My ick on this is I have a real philosophical problem with private money being used for policing purposes. And I draw a weird line on this, and I want to articulate it because I want to be clear about what I mean. A private person donating things like for the honor guard, for ballistic vests, these are operational things. These are, I would call them attendant to the function of being a police officer. When we start bringing corporate dollars in to fund things like the flock camera system or tools that are directly involved in the policing of people, that's where I get a little uncomfortable, just in my heart, because I don't question your integrity at all, and I want to be very clear about that, and I don't question the integrity of any of the command staff of the Ferndale Police Department, but you won't always be the chief. We won't always have the same command staff, and I want to make sure that we're not getting down a road where the folks who are paying for this kind of technology do ultimately end up having a say in where cameras are placed, or what technology is used, or how, prioritization begins to occur. Like, okay, well, I'm going to prioritize looking out for these businesses versus these businesses. And I, again, want to reiterate very clearly to you and to the public that I do not believe that that is a thing that you or your command staff would do. But you won't always be the command staff we have. And Joe may not always be the city manager we have. You never know. I don't know what the future holds. And so when things change, having this precedent could potentially open us up to, I hate to use the slippery slope argument because nobody who went to law school likes to say slippery slope, but it feels like a slippery slope, that we could open the door to something that could be abused. And normally, I'm a strong person to say just because something bad could happen in the future is not a reason to do what you need to do now. I really have reservations about this. Again, if these folks were donating money for more tac vests or, a new cruiser, something like that, those are attendant items, those are supplies, those are operational needs. This is a direct policing tool that affects people's lives. And that's where my concern comes in. I'm really torn on this. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm very torn on this issue, and I'm really struggling with it.
I think one of the concerns I have is with the corporate donations. I just got a message from a resident that they feel Suburban Ford they're not good neighbors, and it's really dangerous on their street with people racing down their street, and they've called and asked for police assistance. And, will that slew the vision of what's happening there? You're policing. I, too, don't want to question your integrity, but it's perception versus reality, and the perception, be there with the corporate donations. So that's my concern.
Chair, I just have a quick question. With our transparency portal and the familiarity that the Citizen Advisory Group has with it, can we have them, how can council help with giving them some questions that they can get answers for? Is that something that we can do? Because I have questions about the transparency portal. I know that they've looked at it. I don't know if they have the same questions that I have, and maybe those questions have already been answered if they've asked them. How can we best coordinate that?
In terms of the department dashboard or the flock dashboard?
Flock dashboard.
The flock dashboard. We're open for input. I can ask CPARB to give me their opinion or feedback, as well as all of your feedback once you've looked at it, and then we can get with the vendor and we can say, can we steer this dashboard and help with storytelling? The whole point of the dashboard is storytelling and providing context. We want to do that. We want to meet your expectation, but quite frankly, there's not a lot of feedback. And a lot of times where we build dashboards and nobody looks at them, and there's no traffic. And we look at the traffic and it's minimal, and we're spending a lot of money with the best intentions. And frankly, I don't know that we're seeing the return, but we're committed to it, and we think that that's the right thing to do. So that's money well spent. If we're putting our best foot towards that transparency goal. But unfortunately, we're not getting the traffic. And I would love everyone here in your circles, or to your colleagues, to your constituents, to share this information and share where it's located and give us the feedback. We're trying to be more accessible. We're trying to have a larger presence in social media and reach out to more people, whether it's by social media or by meeting in the parks and talking over popsicles. Like we're craving feedback. Often it falls on deaf ears, and we only get a handful of people to show up. So that's the harsh reality. But yes, we're always looking for help, and we want council to push these portals so we can get that feedback. Yes, I'd love for council to push those, because there's a lot of time and effort that goes into those. Unfortunately, we're not seeing the return, which is frustrating. Yeah.
So this might be more addressed to you. I know that a lot of the commissions, they have an annual presentation. Are there any plans, or does CPARB, are they open to doing something like that? Just to kind of, I'd like to hear how I know they've been working diligently, but.
Sure, through the chair, it's my understanding they are, as a board, discussing their annual report.
Okay.
They're a board and commission. They're subject, like every other board and commission, to the ordinance. So they are discussing that. I think the board, we've heard there's some anecdotal feedback that's been received concerning about it. I think, I wonder if the citizen complaint application could be modified or amended to include anything related to these reported complaints, so those complaints can be reviewed by a citizen board as any other complaint. The benefit of that is you have an actual record that can be followed up on, and that's helpful for us to actually investigate, and helpful for the board too. I would also say that there's clearly been a long local practice with city donations across all departments. I know Parks and Rec has a donation sponsorship policy. And I do see an opportunity to round that out for a more long-term donation policy that could withstand any change institutionally. And so I can certainly add that as a priority moving forward.
Through the chair, as CPARB's annual report, they're shooting for August, I believe. I know they're in the process of drafting that report.
So through the chair, is there any way that we can not commit the funding right now and get the 60-day report to coincide with, did you say CPAR was going to have the report in August? Was that it? So could we get reporting based on what CPARB, their basic assessment of the flock camera system, as well as the reporting that we expected from the 60-day period before making a commitment like this?
Through the chair, what kind of assessment are you looking for from the CPARB and the flock system?
That's a good question.
We were talking about intake.
Looking back at this, I don't have notes on exactly what we expected after the 60 days. I just know that we expected a report after 60 days on the performance and the efficiency of the cameras. So what kind of data are we collecting for 16 cameras? Where are the 8 most efficient? It would be fabulous if we had that information. It would also be fabulous if we had information, and this is me just spitballing, so bear with me. On the transparency dashboard for Flock, we have hot list hits in the last 30 days, 611. We didn't have 611 arrests or recoveries of vehicle, correct? So like a basic assessment of how that's performing and what it means in actuality for people, so that we could have some of that analysis of what the data is doing. I think that would go miles towards increasing the transparency in the system.
So, sorry, to follow on that, to see if I understand. So we have hot list hits in the last 30 days, 611. And then if maybe there was another transparency category of like, I don't know what to call it, follow-throughs or touches that resulted from, like, how many of those 611 hits resulted in some further, or how with the disposition? So, and I mean all dispositions. So 611 hits, of the 611, if 600 were determined to be not something we're not going to actually go out and engage on, that's really important. That would be very important to know. And then of the 11, 6 resulted in a stop, but no further, everyone was cleared and fine, and then the next 5 resulted in an arrest or recovery of a stolen vehicle or something. That would be really, I think that would be really big for this dashboard, because the dashboard's here. I do look at the Flock dashboard. I have it bookmarked, but I have myself thought, well, this doesn't really, it tells me some things and that it's helpful, but it doesn't tell me a lot. And I think that, as the Mayor Pro Tem just said, I think more detail on this page, and I get that this is provided by Flock, they do this. Well, they want our business, they want to keep our business, so let's talk about how to improve this portal to provide a slightly more granular transparency.
Through the chair, I agree that there's certainly what is a hit?
Right.
Is the first question. And, if you're, like, I have it on my phone, if a stolen vehicle passes a Flock camera, it tells me what stolen vehicle passed this plate, passed this camera. Now, it could pass from northbound Woodward all the way to southbound Woodward and not get stopped, but that's a hit. That's a wanted vehicle or wanted person equals a hit. And they can pass through the city and we can never find them. Even if we look for them, it's not as easy as it sounds. By the time the alert alerts the officers make it out there. Sometimes they find them, sometimes they don't. That's simply it. So when it comes to hits, what is not told is we're trying to highlight our what it was designed to do was catch dangerous people and get them off the streets. And that's why we chose to select the select few incidents, but the officers are using it on a regular, not the officers, the detectives are using it for other crimes. It's not just for violent crime, but it's not used for traffic, and it's not used for immigration. It's used for investigating crimes, whether it's a domestic violence and we're trying to identify somebody or bring somebody into custody, or retail fraud. It's used for a wide range of investigations after the fact is typically how it's used. So that's where the value is. There is some value in the hot list. We have taken in carjackers from the hot list. We have taken in stolen cars from the hot list. But a lot of our biggest victories have come on the investigative end, using the archive data to solve crime. That's where we're seeing our biggest rewards.
Through the chair, you're fleshing out a great report that I would love to see. All that data would be very helpful in assessing the use of the tool and the good that it's done. It would also be helpful in helping dispel any sort of issues that we think are out there for the flock camera system. And again, having that insight, I think would bring a lot of comfort to residents as well as this council as a body, moving forward with essentially a larger installation than we had originally agreed to. I know we agreed to 16, but it was 16 temporarily. And that's, again, what I keep coming back to.
When you said you renegotiated the contract, when does that end for the additional 8? The 2 months?
Sorry?
The 2 months, the additional 2 months that you renegotiated, when does that end?
Honestly, right about now. I have to look at the very last installation date. I know it was sometime in May, but roughly 2 months puts us right about now. So that's why we're trying to seek that funding, so we could make a decision based on what resources we had versus what we could do camera-wise. If we were only able to raise, enough money for half of the extra 8 cameras, then we were willing to say, then that's the best we can do. And that's where we're going to stand until we reassess it, and maybe we have more resources in the future. So that's what we're kind of trying to figure out. So we're kind of in limbo on what that number was going to be when we started entertaining corporate donations.
Do you think that they could give us an extra 45 days to come up with the report that we wanted after 60 days of cameras installed?
Perhaps, I don't know. I know that we haven't cut a check yet. It's been about a year and a half, almost. Oh, maybe not quite a year and a half, but we've been prodded gently by the vendor, trying to get at least year one, which we haven't even paid. So that may be a reach, but it would be speculation to say we could do it or not.
Through the chair, just one more thought on that. I would be fine with paying for the first 8, the ones that we said we were going to keep for sure, with the drug forfeiture money. So are we saying that we didn't pay for those yet?
No, we have not.
Through the chair, that's not what's on the table, though.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that was the agreement last year when the previous council approved it. My understanding is this is just the approval to accept the funds from private donors, much like we have for a lot of other things. I personally don't see the difference between vests, honor guard, flock cameras, guns. Are we going to restrict them from getting a free meal from McDonald's? Because maybe they'll watch McDonald's or 7-Eleven more because they're getting discounts from them. I mean,
Through the chair, I'm patently against the high cholesterol there.
okay, apple fritter, getting free donuts. You know, at what point do you draw the line and you think that they're going to be influenced? For me, our department is understaffed. And I will support any request that provides our men and women with the equipment they need to do their jobs efficiently and effectively. As for concerns, you know, regarding the future, I would hope that voters would elect council members that reflect their beliefs, and that future councils would hire a city manager, and they in return hire a police chief who aligns with the morals and values and integrity of the council and the residents of the city. We can always play could, woulda, shoulda. I have faith in our department, and I think they've used the equipment efficiently and effectively and responsibly over the past year, what limited equipment that we've been able to achieve. I guess my question is, these cameras are, this is a one-time donation. This isn't an annual thing that we would have to cover. They're just going to make a donation for X amount of money. That's it. It's going to purchase the cameras. If we decide as a council, you know what, we're not comfortable having 16 cameras, in 2 years, we can say, you know what, you need to remove 8 of those. They're just not, you know, or you could find that they're just not effective.
Through the chair, that would be covered next spring. This contract term is over.
But that's for the service. The service is different than the cameras. So we're purchasing the cameras, which.
No, through the chair, it's a subscription package. The cameras are part of the subscription. We do not own the hardware.
This will be a 9-month fund with the donations.
And at the end of that 9 months,
Council considers a contract and whether you want to
consider the
continue
contract
it.
overall, and so.
Correct. Correct. So it's really limited.
So really, we could just say that we're extending the 16-camera period for another 9 months through donations from these businesses. And then in March, did you say March or whatever, we could evaluate whether or not we want to continue. The businesses might not be interested in making the donations again to cover those costs. And you might lose those cameras, 8 additional cameras anyways. It would give us more time to evaluate whether or not 16 cameras are of value.
So, but through the chair, forgive me, I wasn't on the council when, you know, the great flockening occurred. But I do, so my understanding is, you know, we did 16, we did the 8, we knew we needed 8 baseline because we had identified the locations where that did make a lot of sense and would have a relatively well-known value. And then the other 8 was to provide additional coverage to then allow us to evaluate, were any of these other corridors, it was to essentially test. I know I'm saying what a lot of folks already know, but I need to talk this out just a moment. Was to provide a test to find out, okay, we know 8 covers the main places we need to cover. Does 8 or any number up to the additional 8 help us greatly in other places? And if we determined at the end of that, well, actually, no, there wasn't really a lot of value in having 8 more cameras. We really did only need the base 8 or only 10. So the additional 8 was meant to be just a trial to find out if any other value could be gained. And we always knew that the possibility was that perhaps there wouldn't be. But the assumption was that we would always have the 8.
I think that's a correct understanding. And the 16 would be leveraged to give the police department an opportunity to evaluate if 8 were the number moving forward, these would be the optimal 8, because they're all pointed inwardly towards the city at entry points, and exit points, rather.
Chief, is there somewhere where individuals who are curious can look and see where those cameras are placed? Something they can look up physically themselves?
Through the chair, that's in the
packet.
It's in the packet under.
March of 2023.
In the approval, it was in that packet as part of the contract approval. We addressed that at that meeting. But I will say we can also make sure if that's not on the website, that can be added to the website. It's just a PDF image.
I think they meant the packet from
A
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
A year ago packet. It's
Okay.
not in the.
Okay,
it's
so
not in
then-
the-
yes,
I was like, I'm
that's
looking
something
Not
that
for
we-
this evening.
For March 23.
But it is possible then for us to have that updated so people can kind of see.
We'll make sure that's available.
Okay. Any other questions? Then we do need a motion to see if we're going to accept the donations. Who will entertain it?
I move to approve the acceptance of corporate donations to support the flock safety program with funds to be deposited into account 101-103-674.000 as submitted by the Chief of Police.
Going to need a second to bring it to vote.
I will second it.
Polika,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kelly,
No.
Mikulski,
No.
Leaks May.
Yes. With that, we are now coming to the portion of our agenda where it is called to council, and I will defer to the city manager for department head updates. Oh, we have resolutions to read, don't we? Well, you can do it during call to council when it comes to you. We have resolutions to read.
Manual. For Parks and Recreation.
Hi again. Just a quick update. I want to make sure that the community is aware of the free event that we'll be putting on at Harding Park. It's the return of Parking Night. We'll be having live music, several lawn games, and we'll be doing a showing of Migration, which just came out last year. It's completely free to the public. Everybody is welcome. The event starts at 6 p.m. Music will start at 6:30, and the movie is scheduled to start at 8:15. It'll be taking place on the lawn at Harding Park. And for any questions or concerns, just contact us. That's it. Oh, I'm sorry. That is taking place next Thursday, July 18th. That seems like an important detail to include there.
Thank you. Next, our DDA Director.
So it's a busy week in downtown Ferndale, a proud accredited Main Street community. And first, I'd like to thank Main Street again for that recognition, and to our board members, our volunteers, our partners in the city, and stakeholders who were part of that accreditation. So it's really an honor for us. It's a great partnership with them. So coming up, we have Pig and Whiskey that will be starting this Friday, July 12th at 5 p.m. That's going through Sunday at midnight. That will be in the downtown area right here in the library lot. So we encourage any festival attendees to enjoy downtown Ferndale and do so responsibly, including travel. If they're driving, there's parking at the Dot that's available on Troy, and then newly installed bicycle parking along Woodward Avenue in the bike lane. So that is something else to take advantage of if you're local. If you're looking for something a little more low vibe, on Sunday afternoon, we're going to have the first performance of the 9 on 9 concert series at Schiffer Park, Planavon and 9 Mile. That will be from 4 to 5 p.m. starting on Sunday. And this kicks off 9 weekends of free outdoor music. And we have a really great lineup this year of a lot of just new acts, a lot of diversity as well. And then our first performance will be the one returning, back by popular demand, Stevie Soul, who was recently recognized as a Kresge Emerging Artist. And 9 on 9 is a family-friendly event, but patio zones are also open, so if anybody wants to bring beverages, you can procure those in the downtown, but please also bring seating like chairs or a blanket, something else to enjoy the outside. And then on behalf of SMART,
we have been asked to promote some community engagement sessions that SMART is looking for in the area. They launched the Smarter Mobility Study in early 2023 to evaluate fixed route and ADA connector service, including microtransit pilot programs. So as part of that study, they've developed 2 new potential transit programs they're looking to get feedback on that would help fill gaps in those service lines. So in order to understand that, they're looking to get community input on those. You can find more information at smarter-mobility.org. So that's smarter, SMARTER-mobility.org, and you can find out more information about those alternatives there and give them input. They will also be, I believe, attending a senior, one of the seniors groups meetings this week, and they will be at our DDA meeting this Thursday morning at 8:30. Also, DDA board meeting this Thursday at 8:30 in council chambers. Thanks.
Thank you, Jenna. I would like to add that our office has been invited to join SMART on a ride-along of a new proposed route, 492A, this Thursday. So I've asked the communications director to join me and the CED director to join me as well, so we can learn a little bit more about how that new route would impact Ferndale.
I will be joining as well.
That appears to be updates from staff. Mayor, the ball is in your court.
Okay. Then I'm going to, I think I've started this, wait, I think I started here last time. Call to council, starting with Councilman Polika.
The only thing I have is earlier in call to audience, someone spoke about the Housing Commission. And I just want to be clear that the city council authority over the Housing Commission is limited to the appointment of board members to the Housing Commission. The Housing Commission Board of Directors are responsible for the hiring of the director, and ultimately, city council has no power over the staffing of the Housing Commission, and all issues and complaints should be directed to the Housing Commission Board of Directors, which meets on the 3rd Monday of every month. That's all I have.
Councilmember Polika? Johnson?
In terms of announcements, I want to reiterate what Greg just said about the Ferndale Housing Commission. Residents who are concerned should reach out to the board members. Many of them know me because I was one of their board members until I was elected to this body for a number of years. I encourage them to continue to reach out to board members. If they, feel like they don't know who to reach out to on the board, they can always reach out to me. And I will connect them to a board member if they need that connection. And I am distressed to hear about the issues at the Ferndale Housing Commission. I think the loss of Executive Director Van Pooker was a great loss for the Housing Commission, and filling her shoes has been very challenging. I would encourage residents to, continue to speak out. Never feel like you can't speak up. This is your home. You are a resident of Ferndale, no matter what anyone may tell you or make you feel. You are a resident of Ferndale with all of the rights and privileges and joys and agonies that come with being a resident of Ferndale. And so you should always feel free to reach out to anybody who you feel might be able to offer assistance, including individual council members. Perhaps we can meet with, folks in our individual capacity and try to help with issues. So please know that you're heard, know that you're seen, and you can always reach out to us and to the board. I would like to read the proclamation that we approved tonight, recognizing July 2024 as Disability Pride Month, and to celebrate the 34th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. I am privileged to be the council liaison to the Ferndale's Accessibility and Inclusion Advisory Commission, and so I am honored to read out this proclamation. At a regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Ferndale, Oakland County, Michigan, held on July 8th, 2024, the following resolution was moved and supported. July 26, 2024 marks the 33rd anniversary of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, a milestone for accessibility and civil rights for people with disabilities. And the City of Ferndale, Michigan proclaims the month of July 2024 to be Disability Pride Month, a growing holiday and movement from disability justice culture, whereupon the month will be taken to highlight the history, stories, organizations, and practices that promote inclusion for people with disabilities. And the City of Ferndale also proclaims action wherein we take time to reflect on different disabilities and how the city and our community can continue to improve and remove barriers to be a place of choice to live, work, and visit for persons with disabilities. And the Ferndale City Council created the Accessibility and Inclusion Advisory Commission to study the challenges relating to barriers for persons with visual, hearing, cognitive, and mobility disabilities and their interaction with the community, and to advise City Council on its findings. And the City of Ferndale's vision as the benchmark for a modern community that embraces the richness of diversity and brings inclusive hospitality to life includes a strong commitment to serve all members of our community. And the City of Ferndale, Michigan affirms the principles of equality and inclusion for people with disabilities as set forth for the state of Michigan and as embodied in the ADA, the laws of the state of Michigan, and the ordinance of the City of Ferndale. And now therefore be it resolved, the Ferndale City Council hereby extends greetings and best wishes to all observing July 2024 as Disability Pride Month and the 34th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Else?
That's it.
Okay. I move to Mayor Pro Tem Mikulski.
No updates tonight, but I did have a comment. We recently had some residents reaching out about the railway and some accessibility issues. I'm very happy to report that the area on Hilton that was causing such an issue appears to have been fixed. It's nice and smooth now to go over the railway. I wanted to ask staff, you know, I have images of the signs that are next to the railway where we should be directing people to call that number to report in when there's a blockage at the rail. I was hoping that there's a way that we can communicate that out to residents and kind of reiterate it. I know there's multiple ways to call in. There's also the FRA.dot.gov blocked crossings where people can report train issues, so blockages. But I feel like we just need something to help residents understand that this is not City Council's doing. This is CN, and we have to put the pressure where the pressure will actually do something. So this is my moment to really ask staff, is that something that we can do?
Yes.
Through the chair, if I could break the rule, do you know where that number goes to? The one that's at the...
It's an emergency line. They call it their CN Police.
Okay, so it's CN that it goes to?
Correct.
They don't have a text one, do they? It'd be great if they had a number that you
I
could
don't
just
think
text something.
Yeah, I don't think they have text. I will say when the resident raised the red flag again about the Hilton Road location, I called at 11:30 at night and somebody answered, and immediately they were sending somebody out to that location to assess the road because the boot on the track was coming off into the roadway. So they are very responsive when you call in, but there is also that area where you can pull something up on your phone through a website and report blockages. So there's two ways to really communicate in. It's just the emergency one, I think, gets results a little bit quicker.
And Councilmember?
Sure. Ferndale seniors have their meeting this Wednesday at 11 o'clock at the Hazel Park Community Center, and it's an ice cream social, so don't miss out.
All right. So I would like to read the resolution honoring the service of Oakland County Sheriff Deputy Reckling and encouraging community reflection. At a regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Ferndale, Oakland County, Michigan, held in council chambers on the 8th day of July, 2024, the following resolution was moved and supported unanimously. The Ferndale City Council strategic plan identifies a safe, protected, and engaged community as a critical success factor for the city of Ferndale. And the critical success factor is defined as Ferndale residents flourish in a safe, welcoming environment where proactive, responsive, inclusive, and equitable public safety is foundational to community health. And delivering on the expectations of a safe, protected, and engaged community requires the daily sacrifices by members of the Ferndale Police Department and the broader law enforcement community. And the members of the City Council were greatly saddened to learn of the death of Oakland County Deputy Bradley J. Reckling, who was tragically killed in the line of duty while pursuing the recovery of a vehicle stolen from Madison Heights on the afternoon of June 22nd. And according to news reports, Deputy Reckling was a husband and a father of 3 with a 4th child on the way, highlighting the profound personal sacrifices made by professional police officers. Therefore, be it resolved that Mayor Raylon Leaks May, on behalf of the Ferndale City Council, extends the city's deepest condolences to Deputy Reckling's family and Oakland County Sheriff's Department. And be it further resolved that the Ferndale City Council urges all citizens to reflect on how they can contribute as individuals toward fostering a safe, protected, engaged, and community, and ensuring that Ferndale remains a welcoming and secure environment for all, including our law officers, our law enforcement officers. And I say this resolution, I don't know if it was known, but my mom was an Oakland County Sheriff's Department deputy. She was the first African-American sergeant to serve in that role. So I come from a background of law enforcement. So I just really wanted to send my condolences to the Reckling family, and again, to let our police know that we appreciate what you do and the sacrifices you make every day. I would also like to just comment, we had some tough conversations tonight, and I think that's what really makes me appreciate council so much, is because we all have differences and we can all appreciate where those differences lie. Our opinions, how we approach things is what makes this body, I think, pretty special. So I want it to be known that no matter how we agree, whether we disagree or not, I appreciate and respect each and every one of you. And I know at the end of the day, we all want what's best for this community, and we try to do our best to serve in that capacity. I would also like to just, something I also would like to state is that I'm really appreciative of Councilmember Kelly. I have not been able to attend our lovely, wonderful, wonderful DDA meetings due to being so busy, but Councilmember Kelly has been just right there ready to take on the helm, and I just appreciate you so much for that. And with that being said, and I call this meeting to order, adjourn, I'm sorry, I'm kind of tired tonight, at 9:46 p.m. Thank you.